Welcome to the Bearcats Den with President Taylor. I'm Dr. Ivy Taylor, your host and president of Russ College. For today's show, our guest is Ms. Tiffiney Gray, our new Associate Vice President for Institutional Advancement. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
We are so excited that you've joined the team. It's been, what, about 5 or 6 weeks?
Yes,
so
about
far?
5 weeks.
Okay, and you have hit the ground running. But before we talk about the work here at Russ, the viewers would love to know a little more about you, your background, your journey, the skills that you bring, the life experiences that have shaped your passion for this work. So tell us about yourself. You're a native Mississippian, right?
Absolutely, I am, and it's so good to be back in Mississippi. I've been in the Wisconsin area and in Texas for several years, and being able to come back this summer has been more than a treat and more than a delight. But I am originally from Jackson, Mississippi, went to Murrah High School, and then I went to college at age 16. I started at Tougaloo College at that time and was afforded a presidential scholarship. And so, you know, having my parents having attended Tougaloo College and my grandmother as a graduate of Tougaloo, they instilled in me early on the value of alumni involvement and engagement. And so starting out there, I was also a Jackson Heart Study Scholar. So I got introduced to this world of health disparities and this issue of equity and social justice early on. And so that's where the journey began at Tougaloo College. And throughout the years, I would have to say that common thread that has been, you know, consistently there through every role, through every internship, and through every professional appointment has been this desire to see people realize health and well-being in the holistic sense of the term. And so that all began with my journey at Tougaloo College.
And so are you a Tougaloo graduate? Or
I am.
Oh, okay.
I kind of went to every institution in Mississippi just about. So Tougaloo College for undergrad and the University of Southern Mississippi for a master's degree in economic development. And then many years later, the University of Mississippi for a master's degree in sociology. And so, you know, that may sound like a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, but that kind of consistent thread is looking at health disparities and health equity. And what is surprising to some, but not surprising to others, is that some of the most powerful interventions to improve health, the health of individuals, of families, and of communities, those are non-medical interventions. Those are social, economic, and education interventions. And so I absolutely love the opportunity to connect young people, families, to opportunities for economic advancement and social mobility.
Now these themes resonate with me because, you know, my background is urban planning, and while my focus area was affordable housing, I also encountered, you know, all the connections between the various issues that impact well-being for families. So tell us about some of the different roles that you played leading up to your arrival here at Rust. So when you left Tougaloo, what kind of position did you start in?
Absolutely. I left Tougaloo and went directly to graduate school, and I kind of faced a fork in the road. I could have continued in a master's in public health, but I made that decision to look into economic development because at the end of the day, the health disparities that I was looking at, particularly among African Americans in cardiovascular disease and chronic illness, that common denominator was socioeconomic status. And to the extent that we can combat disinvestment, urban decay, blight, and issues of workforce development and community development, that's how we can equip families and individuals to realize their optimal health. And so at that fork in the road, I went to the University of Southern Mississippi and studied there. I got involved with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation's Rural People, Rural Policy Initiative as a student. And in the midst of that, I got a job offer with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Mississippi. And so it's funny how sometimes things fall in your lap. And so I started out there working to advance youth development opportunities. And I remember sometimes wondering, now, how does this connect to health? How does this connect to that vision of mine to see people realize optimal health and well-being? And I got the answer so many times. The fundraising that I did and the program development that I did to design and finance programs to advance youth in their education opportunities, after school enrichment, and even the health and wellness program that we had. I was specifically proud of the job readiness programming to encourage young people to articulate a vision and a dream. And so that was the first, full-time. I had a host of internships, but that was the first full-time role that I had at the Boys and Girls Clubs, working in grants and program development, working closely with our board of directors around fundraising events. And so I got a taste for all of that. Working
and what
with,
location was that?
That was the Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Mississippi. So I was in the administrative offices over 6 club units in Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had an opportunity to make a wide-ranging impact then, because you were affecting the outcomes at several clubs.
Absolutely, absolutely. That experience also kind of drilled in. We were working to support over 5,000 youth in the Central Mississippi area. And one of the things I learned that process is the value of donor relations and stewardship and program evaluation. They all kind of converge to be able to communicate back to donors, what is the impact of your gift? What is the impact of your investment? How many grades have we improved, or how many life skills have we developed? And we have to share that in a concrete way that's backed up by data. And so that experience was very enriching.
So then did you kind of stay in that vein as it relates to fund development with your next position?
Absolutely. Once again, got recruited to go over to Jackson State University. And what was then their Office of Development later changed to the Office of Institutional Advancement with some restructuring, but had an amazing opportunity there to design programs. And so when I look at how an institution is an anchor institution in the community that has an opportunity to implement strategic initiatives, that's kind of the seed of where I was. And so I was able to develop a student success and retention initiative with about $500,000 in funding from the Lumina Foundation. And what I loved is that the unique nurturing environment that HBCUs offer, we were able to harness some of those best practices or high impact practices through that grant opportunity. Another kind of project that is a point of pride of mine is about $1.2 million in funding that we received from designing a pre-K through early childhood education program that focused on educating parents about the value of neurocognitive development from birth to age 5. That's when the groundwork is laid. And so you might ask, well, what does Jackson State have to do with that? Well, we were right on the kind of tail end of the No Child Left Behind initiatives. And the premise was, well, my gosh, people might get left behind way before kindergarten. So how do we plant those seeds early? And as an institution of higher education, the more we can invest in that pipeline, it benefits us and it benefits our communities.
Now, was it difficult communicating the need for resources working at a public institution? Because some people think, well, that's funded by tax dollars.
Not really, not really. One of the data points that we like to share with alumni was kind of the difference between our endowment and that of other institutions, of course your Ivy League institutions. And I vividly remember kind of the almost moment of heartbreak when I saw the huge disparity and the huge gap there. And so there's a story to be told with that. There's a story that resonates with alumni, with corporations and foundations, that there are both historical reasons why those disparities exist and contemporary reasons. And I think it's a compelling message that motivates people to give.
Yeah, some of us are having a hard time grappling with the historical reasons, which makes it difficult to understand the contemporary reasons. But so after Jackson State, you did a stint in the Midwest?
I sure did. I sure did. I returned to research roots and kind of returned back to more of the hardcore public health, but what I had was the community engagement experience. And so it's interesting, I had as an undergraduate a health internship at Harvard School of Public Health that focused on CBPR, community-based participatory research. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so cool. And then here it is, about a decade later, I was able to be engaged with one of the foremost researchers in CBPR. and in community engaged research. And so although my role wasn't formally resource development, I bring in resources wherever I go. And it's kind of like it's a good problem to have, if you will. So brought in some funds at the Medical College of Wisconsin from Pfizer Foundation. I helped to facilitate our first National Endowment for the Humanities Award, because who would think that a medical college would get a National Endowment for Humanities grant? But we were able to look at community engagement and bring in an interdisciplinary approach to improving health outcomes. And again, that's my lens.
Okay, so but you got a little bit cold there with the snow, right?
I sure did. Let me tell you, I was surviving the snow. Summers are blissful, obviously, because they're like mild and 80 degrees. I survived winters, but it was the polar vortex
Oh, yes.
of 2019. 24 below zero, but the wind chill was close to 50 below zero. Yeah, that did it for me. That sealed the deal.
So
Within weeks, I was in Texas.
Texas, and then eventually back home to Mississippi.
That's
so
right.
we are very excited to have you here, and
Thank
look
you.
forward to chatting about your work here at Russ College after a brief break.
Awesome.
We'll take a short break. Please enjoy a selection by the world-renowned Russ College Acapella Choir under the direction of Dr. Arlandra Harvey. Welcome back to the Bearcats Den with President Taylor. I'm Dr. Ivy Taylor, your host and president of Russ College. For today's show, our guest is Ms. Tiffiney Gray, Associate Vice President for Institutional Advancement at Russ College. So, Ms. Gray, for the laypersons who may be watching, will you talk a little bit about what institutional advancement means?
Absolutely. When you think about advance, it's about propelling towards the future, moving and progressing towards the future. And so I think about sustainability. I think about expansion and how we elevate Russ College. And so whether that's elevating the image of Russ College, elevating its programs and scholarship opportunities, it's anything that helps us sustain and grow our programming. So advancing and progressing toward the future. And what that involves, obviously, is resources. Resources are the heartbeat of everything that we need, whether it's fiscal, financial resources, human resources, the time and the talent of people, and even the student resources and alumni resources that we have. Those of our partners, corporate and otherwise. And so it's galvanizing that support and galvanizing those resources from multiple areas to advance the mission, vision, and values of Russ College.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so this is a kind of a new office we're creating. We used to have various components in different places, but you are supervising the staff that focuses on alumni development and relations, which has been kind of a mainstay and is, I would say, maybe a cornerstone of the office. Would you talk a little bit about what you've learned about alumni relations here at Russ?
Absolutely. A couple of things. We have so much to be proud of. We have a very healthy endowment. We have goals to grow it, but we have a healthy endowment. And I think that is a reflection of the philanthropy and the generosity of our alumni. In addition, we have several alumni who've established endowed scholarship funds, alumni who are actively engaged in annual giving, and who absolutely love Russ College. I think some opportunities for us are enhancing donor relations, really engaging in that conversation around stewardship and the impact of the gifts that they have made. But what I've discovered is that as I've looked at the 10-year trends of alumni giving, we've had some peaks and valleys, but I'm so proud of the tremendous generosity of our alumni in the past. We have, as you said, had a focus on alumni development, and we are reimagining that and expanding the focus of that to look at alumni relations and annual giving, and then segmenting our giving. If you look at it like a pipeline, we have that opportunity to look at annual giving at a certain level, and then our major gifts, and then breaking out to other types of giving like corporate and foundation relations, and athletics and other areas of philanthropy. So we're really excited about segmenting our areas of giving.
One important area that many colleges are starting to tap into is how we groom and cultivate current students so that they're prepared as soon as they graduate to start, being a blessing to the college. Even, at that first job, being able to contribute maybe smaller amounts. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Oh gosh, I'm so happy to talk about that. When I was at Jackson State University, I participated in the Staff Leadership Institute, and one of kind of the capstone projects was presenting to the president a pitch. And my thought was, my gosh, we need to institute changing the face of philanthropy. And at that time, this was maybe a decade ago, a decade ago now, there was so much buzz around Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey, and while we are, mega rich and wealthy benefactors, I think that we had an opportunity to think of ourselves as philanthropists and plant that seed early on. And so I wanted to encourage students to think of themselves, that changing the face of philanthropy. You're a philanthropist when you look in the mirror. As a matter of fact, it's Black Philanthropy Month in August. And so what I love about our community is that we have been engaged in philanthropy and generosity before it was a popular term, whether it's coming together to build churches or tabernacles or schools or communities. That's in the heartbeat of what we do. And so I think for us, we have that opportunity to plant those seeds and cultivate that sense of philanthropy in students early on. I've already reached out to our team in the first year experience office about opportunities to have that interface and FaceTime with students to cultivate and instill that sense of philanthropy.
Okay, wonderful. You mentioned in your comments a little bit about corporate and foundation giving. Tell us some of your thoughts on this moment that we're in where we're seeing larger gifts from many corporations and foundations to HBCUs.
We sure are. I think there's something to be said about your transformational gifts, and we're talking about tens of millions of dollars. They can absolutely change the trajectory of an institution. And I feel that some of the larger benefactors who've made those gifts, and many times they'll admit they didn't know who to give to. So I believe it's a matter of visibility, that brand recognition that we're working so hard to advance so that we are top of mind when they want to give to an HBCU. And it's certainly fertile ground to invest in because we have been advancing education, we've been providing opportunities for intellectual enlightenment, social mobility, and economic opportunity. And I think those three issues converge, and they are issues that any corporation would want to invest in. Similarly, when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've been working in that space as HBCUs
Yes.
before they were buzz terms.
Yes.
I think that we're the experts in that space, and we don't have to wait on other mainstream institutions to catch up. We're at the tip of the spear. And so what I'm excited about is partnering with our Chief of Staff and Public Relations to make sure that people know about Russ College and they know that this is fertile ground to make their investments.
Talk a little bit more about that communication strategy, and what are some of the things that ways in which you think we need to elevate our messaging or outlets that would help us in ensuring that a broader array of people know about Russ College.
Absolutely. So obviously it's leveraging the great groundwork that the public relations team has laid, and then building on top of that to institute development communications. So we have a number of pieces. As a matter of fact, my team and I are meeting later this week to really list out and strategize what's the month-to-month sequencing of our communications and the seasonal sequencing of communications. So that's kind of one thing. You have your print marketing collateral. But in addition to that, it does boil back down to relationships. And so having that face time, having the networking opportunities with corporate and foundation leaders and or their staff. And I tell you, the alumni are often the gateway to those opportunities. Leveraging where they're employed, leveraging their matching gift programs, but also leveraging where alumni are positioned within companies to serve as an executive sponsor for our ideas and our proposals. So those are some of the opportunities there.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit your thoughts on some of our challenges as relates to our physical plant. You know, everyone always looks forward to modern facilities, and we've been talking quite a bit about making investments. How will your office play a role in that process?
We will play a big role in that process. And with your background in urban planning, you're very familiar with gap financing and this idea of pulling together resources from multiple types of sources, public and private. And so obviously we've had calls with HUD and with others. We're advancing conversations with Mississippi Development Authority. But on campus, we have an opportunity to leverage relationships with alumni and their corporate contacts to secure what I call leadership gifts. So they're not necessarily the transformational gifts of tens of millions, but anything six figures and above, we welcome 6 and 7 figures, we welcome that. And I believe that corporations, whether it's, and I don't want to call anyone out, but whether it's Pepsi or Shell Oil Company, that they will see the value of what we're adding, particularly in our graduates and how they're able to contribute to the workforce. I'm very excited that we are getting the ball rolling on seeking out support and developing an economic impact study so that we can articulate with good data what is the impact of Russ College financially to the local and the regional economy. I think the case would be very compelling once we have that information.
That will be critical information for us to share, because we really are an anchor institution here. That was something I almost wrote my dissertation on.
Yes.
Anchor institution. It kind of combined my interest in urban spaces and places along with my interest in HBCUs. But yes, Russ College has played a key role here in Holly Springs for quite some time. How are you finding Holly Springs? You're in a completely different part of the state. You're used to down in the Delta, and now you're up here in the Hill Country. What do you think?
I like it. I love the rolling hills. It's definitely a workout. I love the lush greenery and the trees. It's just amazing to be back. I have found that the summer is not as intense. So I don't know if it's the northern Mississippi piece or what that is, but it's surprisingly refreshing. It's a much smaller community than what I grew up in, obviously smaller than the Milwaukee area, but there is a hominess and a feeling of being at home that I really wouldn't trade for anything.
Well,
it's
that
wonderful.
is wonderful to hear. We're so excited to have you as part of the team. Welcome back to Mississippi.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Look forward to working together.
You too.
That's it for today's episode of the Bearcats Den. We'll see you next time.